and welcome to another Barotrauma update. This one's big. For this version of 0.6.1.0, we'll check out what's new and what has changed. I'll start with the player affected side of things and then I'll move on to the admin side. This massive update focuses on changes to monsters and their AI. The Watchers, which were previously always docile, even if you engage them, will now become aggravated when hit with ranged weapons. This will make it a lot more important for crews to have weapon discipline. Because Watchers are extremely resilient and tough to kill, as you might have found out already, now they will also attack hostile players, and this makes them a large threat. The enemies are also more unpredictable. Before they always moved at a constant fixed speed, but now they move much faster when attacking or retreating from engagements, sort of like a sprint. And speaking of retreating, this is also a new mechanic which usually occurs when monsters lose a certain amount of health. However, they can also do this when they're running away from predators. The Tiger Thresher and the Charybdis now have more parts of their bodies, which will give a smoother look when they're re-attacking your hole and such, compared to the previous kind of weird shimmy look when they kept changing directions and attacking your hole. Mantises and crawlers now have the option of sticking to the ice walls or cavern walls to ambush their targets. This will mean that the captains and gunners have to keep an eye out on their sonar for slight bumps in the wall. The AI will have an even lower chance of missing their attacks, as if their accuracy was actually low, meaning survival rates are overall lowered. And to finish off this monster tweak section, creatures will now hunt on a sort of food chain. Larger creatures will hunt smaller ones, so it's now possible to see an endworm eating a swarm of husks outside of your ship instead of fighting in a red versus blue scenario, which it always previously has been. Now it's more realistic. Interestingly enough, if there's two Tiger Threshers, they won't eat each other because they're the same size. However, if one of them is dead, they'll eat their corpse and ignore your ship, at least in my experience. And also, if they're eating a creature, they also won't bother to attack your ship because they already have the food. So, another interesting thing from this mechanic. Moving on, there's a new artifact which will attract creatures to your ship, making the ship a hotspot for enemy activity. As you can see, this swarm of husks are attracted to the Nasanov artifact and not the Schneelands, the ship. It's interesting to note that the monsters will not cooperate to get the artifact, and instead they'll prioritize food and then move on to the artifact. Which means there is some room for a little bit of human sacrifice to get involved just to get to the objective, although it's probably messed up. This makes it the fourth artifact, including the fire, thermal, oxygen, skyholder, and power artifacts, which I completely forgot what the power one was. You might have noticed that when you respawn, getting back to your main ship compartments and quarters was impossible, and this is because your respawned character's ID card was only matching the shuttle and not the ship. And previously, you'd have to scavenge the ID cards off of your, dead body from from your last life if it was still there. But now, with the possibility of bodies being eaten, limbs being severed, it's even harder for this to happen. So thankfully, when you respawn, your ID card will now match both the shuttle and the main ship, fixing this massive problem. Moving on, the job preferences that are selected in the lobby screen will now stay after restarting the game, and previously you'd have to pick it every time you joined a separate lobby or every restart. Graphically, there are new particles when blood comes out of a monster or a player, along with new matching blood, fire, and explosive decals. As you might have seen before, your body can lose limbs, become dismembered when attacked, eaten, blown up by respective creatures and explosions. Mechanics, engineers, and anyone with a wrench will now be able to pick up buttons and other electrical components when they are detached from a surface. Previously, you'd have to detach it even if it wasn't attached to anything. And now that brings me to the admin side of things. Alright, big thing. Dedicated servers are now available, and on top of that, admins and hosts can now provide ban reasons along with a ban timer to bans and kicks respectively, of course. The revive command done by admins or hosts is now going to work as intended. Previously, you'd revive the character, but the player wouldn't be able to control it, and neither would the AI, and you just have a lifeless, basically a zombie there. A command has been added for hosts, admins, and servers to give control of a character over to a player. So, if I'm interpreting this correctly, that means that now I can give control of, let's say, a husk or a crawler over to a player who is maybe dead and wants to play as an enemy for, you know, an event. Or maybe if a player wanted to volunteer to play as the Moloch, then yeah, sure, why not? There's now a message box that hosts can use in order to communicate to players directly, and you might understand what I mean by message box if you recall the beginning pop-up that happens when a round starts with those two types of info. Hosts can now use that to directly communicate to players and such. The server logs are now going to be massively detailed and increased. They're now going to contain things such as railgun shots, for example. So when a railgun shot is fired, you'll get to know the type of shot that was fired, whether nuclear or standard, the type of ammo in it, whether someone put flashbangs inside or C4 to pack more punch or slightly stun an enemy. Characters throwing items like grenades or whatever else you can throw is now going to be logged, and wire logging when using junction boxes and connection panels are now going to be more detailed. Finally, when controlling a non-human character, such as, let's say, a Moloch, the camera will zoom out farther depending on the type of creature. So it might zoom out farther when you're controlling an endworm, for example. So yeah, that's it. That's most of the main updates for 0.6.1.0, aside from all of the main bug fixes. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking. To stay informed on future Barotrauma updates, changes, and gameplay, subscribe and feel free to join the Barotrauma Steam group and the UndertoedGames.com official discussions. That's it for today. See you aboard.